Musicians tend to make music for one of two groups of people: their fans or themselves. Granted, the very idea of recording songs and releasing them to the public would suggest that there's a part of every artist you've ever heard on the radio that at least wants to have some fans. And yet, occasionally, these artists turn on the people who just wanted to give them nothing but adoration and money. A lot of times, it's the result of having a massive and unexpected hit single. There's something about a breakout song that sometimes means the people who wrote it just break out in hives. True artists don't have their songs played in sports arenas or on a commercial after all. That seems to be a common denominator amongst bands that have a certain unconscionable ill will towards their more casual fans. Other times, musicians can just be unappreciative a-holes. It can be as simple as that. Regardless of the rationale behind it though, it's tough to hear your favorite musician tell you that you're part of the problem. Now, to be fair, most of the following bands certainly don't hate all of their fans or even hate some of their fans all of the time. Maybe we can just put it down to having some monumental off days. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 7 musicians who hate you for listening to their music. Number 7, Blues Traveler. For years, Blues Traveler was a little-known jam band making their way across college radio stations. Their big commercial breakthrough came in 1994 with the release of Runaround, a song that was infinitely more pop-oriented than anything else they'd released to that point. Much to the chagrin of the band, it became their calling card, earning a Grammy and spending a record-setting amount of time on the Billboard charts. When they released yet another simple pop-rock song as their follow-up single called Hook, it seemed the former jam band had finally caved and sold their souls to the top 40 radio. But further exploration of Hook reveals just the opposite. They hated being known as hitmakers, and they hated you for making them that way. The song begins, "It doesn't matter what I say as long as I sing it with inflection." From there, singer John Popper explains in detail why people will listen to any garbage that's on the radio, whether or not it has any meaning whatsoever, as long as it sounds catchy. The chord structure used in Hook is the same as Pachelbel's canon in D, which is the most commonly used chord structure in all of pop music. John Popper's theory was that as long as you could use those chords, you could get away with literally telling listeners that they are morons for liking a song, but they would bob their head and sing along anyways, and in the end, it kinda worked. Number 6, Weezer. Calling Weezer's sophomore album Pinkerton a cult classic is still a bit of an understatement. For the most die-hard Weezer fans, Pinkerton is the end-all be-all of their discography. Rivers Cuomo might as well have never written another song after 1996. Cuomo, however, disagrees a lot. Even all these years later, he sticks to his opinion that Pinkerton is one of the worst things he's ever done to himself, likening it to, and I quote, "getting really drunk at a party and spilling your guts out in front of everyone, and then awaking the next morning with a dire hangover and realizing you, and I quote again, made a complete fool of yourself." He's not only put off by the album's cult following, but considers the fans who show up to Weezer concerts hoping to hear some choice cuts from Pinkerton to be, and I quote, "sick in a diseased sort of way." He just doesn't want to play those songs, and he doesn't know why so many people are still clamoring to hear them. All he knows is that he never wants to hear them again. Honestly, he probably wouldn't mind if fans of Pinkerton just rode a rocket into the middle of the sun, although he did play the album in its entirety for certain dates on the Memories Tour in 2010. So at least it's clear that Rivers Cuomo likes money a little bit more than he hates the cult of Pinkerton fans. Number 5, Radiohead. A lot of bands have that one song in their discography that they hate. Maybe it's the most popular song, the one that you literally must play at every live show, lest you embitter your fans to the point of rioting. For Radiohead, that song is Creep. For lead singer Tom York, the song is the worst thing that's ever happened to him, and you can kindly, and I quote, for even suggesting he play it at his shows. Ever since it became a gigantic hit single that put the band on the map, York has freaked out at the mere mention of Creep, or as he likes to call it, crap. Sometimes on tour, Tom York will make the opening act play the song because he knows the fans want to hear it, but he doesn't want to be the one to sing it to them. It's not just Creep either. York and his crew also hate everything about High and Dry, another fan favorite, going so far as to call it a Rod Stewart song. I mean, what the hell's wrong with Rod Stewart? Basically, the lesson here is that if you like a Radiohead song, just keep it to yourself. Otherwise, Tom York will call you an idiot and refuse to ever play it again. Number 4, Beastie Boys. By now, the Beastie Boys have cemented their legacy as one of the most influential hip-hop acts of all time, stringing together album after album of pure genius for nearly 3 decades. When you think of old-school hip-hop, you no doubt think of Run DMC, Grandmaster Flash, and the Beastie Boys. Or if you're one of those people, you think of You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party. And if you are one of those people, you might not belong at a Beastie Boys show. Initially meant as a satirical take on the dopey, brainless party songs of the era, like Twisted Sister's I Wanna Rock, the Beastie Boys' breakthrough hit unfortunately went on to define the early part of their career entirely. Try as they may, they just couldn't quite escape the legions of backwards cap-wearing jocks who unironically loved what should be a joke song. Mike D put it best when he said, and I quote, "We might have reinforced certain values of some people in our audience when our own values were actually totally different. There were tons of guys singing along to Fight for Your Right who were oblivious to the fact that it was a total goof on them. So all you jocks out there, the Beastie Boys are not fans of you, and they find it weird that you're fans of them. So I guess just stop." Number 3, Liam Gallagher. There may not be another musician on the planet who showed more contempt for his fans at the height of their superstardom than Liam Gallagher. Always the saltier half of the Gallagher brothers, Liam was a big fan of getting hammered before going on stage and then calling the thousands of devotees who showed up idiots. Sometimes he would stop singing and lie down on stage to rest if the crowd was singing along too loudly. He was like a less reliable Axl Rose, if such a thing is even possible. But the main source of contention between Liam and his fans is the song that launched his band into the stratosphere, Wonderwall. Put simply, Liam Gallagher hates Wonderwall. He hates it more than Radiohead hates Creep. That might owe more to the fact that his brother Noel wrote the song and Liam would love nothing more than to kick his brother right in the balls most days. He often said that he wanted to gag every time he had to slog through Wonderwall at different gigs. Once Oasis broke up, Liam vowed to never sing the song again. He was especially displeased with it being his major point of recognition in the States. And I quote, "You go to America and they're like, 'Are you Mr. Wonderwall?' And you want to chin someone." And for our global audience not listening in the UK, to chin someone means to beat them up. Number 2, G.G. Allin. Oh god, this guy. So G.G. Allin, for those not in the know, was one of the most extreme performers and musicians, quote-unquote, in history, and not remotely in a good way. Dude was responsible for cutting himself, pooping himself on stage, eating said poop, and throwing it at his fans, all in the name of provoking a response. Yes, he has his fans to this day, and all the power to you if you just like how much this guy took counterculture to its extremes, but if we're talking about how G.G. Allin handled his time in the spotlight, it wasn't very good. Not at all. Especially not to me. Simply because G.G. was pushing envelopes and tearing down boundaries with terribly produced music designed to annoy and provoke, his live shows became violent outlets for his most inner turmoil. Equipment was broken, arrests were made, and fans were abused. The idea being that if you were still seeing this guy live, you deserved what you got. This attitude culminated in one of G.G.'s final appearances on The Jane Whitney Show in 1993, where he openly described taking his own life and those of his remaining fans. Certainly a controversial figure, but for me, this dude was just wrong. And number 1, John Lennon and Paul McCartney. When it comes to inner turmoil, no band had covered it quite like the Beatles. They often despised each other but knew how to keep it together for the sake of their careers, at least for a little while. Because of the tensions between certain bandmates though, most songs were written solo and then brought to the band to be fleshed out. This songwriting habit essentially formed 2 different bands, John Lennon's Beatles and Paul McCartney's Beatles. Lennon's Beatles took themselves quite seriously, writing songs with so many layers that it was impossible to sift through the meaning after just one listen, whereas McCartney's Beatles just liked to have fun and write songs that would later be called silly little love songs. And as a fan, you were either a Strawberry Fields Forever kind of person or a Hello Goodbye kind of person. After the band eventually broke up and all the infighting became public record, Lennon and McCartney took jabs at each other's songwriting styles, with Lennon calling Paul's attempt at songwriting granny music, or lightweight love songs, or sometimes just flat-out garbage. Likewise, McCartney fired back, considering Lennon's constant politicizing to be pompous and overwrought. By extension, if your favorite Fab Four track is Come Together, Paul probably considers you a little pretentious. And if your jam was Maxwell's Silver Hammer, then John would think that you're pretty childish. Because they had such wildly different tastes in music, and varying passions as to what good music actually was, no Beatles fan would ever be fully embraced by the entirety of the band members. And that has been my rundown of various artists that really had a whole bunch of beef with their fans, although all the reasons aren't as cut and dry as you think. Let me know what you think down in the comments below though. How much do you separate the art from the artist? Is it harder or easier in the digital age? And have you ever been put off a song after hearing an artist's comments on it? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture Music. Please like, share, and subscribe as we're just getting everything off the ground, and I'll catch you soon.